Our opening words this morning come from Catherine Hawk herself, and I invite you on this cold and foggy and now snowing morning to come into this place, this warm place, in a spirit of meditation and an invitation to peace, and just a quiet space as we open with these words. Come burdened, come savvy, come aging, come discouraged, come wanting, come full, come longing, come drifting, come. We celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We celebrate a movement and a spirit, and in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. and all of the people, some whose names we know and some whose names we don't, I would like to share I termed it reading by Fannie Lou Hamer, but it's actually a famous sentence that that lifts me up and encourages me, and I want to make sure she gets due credit for it. So Fannie Lou Hamer, as you may know, was a very influential civil rights organizer, and Martin Luther King Jr. credited her with bringing the political powers to their knees in repentance. That's a direct quote. And she was a song leader, songs like Go Tell It on the Mountain, This Little Light of Mine, and Ain't Nobody Gonna Turn Me Around, and Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around are a few of the songs that she led to lift spirits and keep the focus on freedom and justice. So on her stone, her epitaph reads, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And those are some of the words she's most famous for. And she delivered those words in the speech that Martin Luther King Jr. felt brought political powers to their knees. So in honor of her and Martin Luther King Jr. and all those named and unnamed, it's an honor to be together today to celebrate that movement and honor the ongoing struggle. Surprise! Our regularly scheduled speaker was too ill to make the trip. So we miss him very much, and I'm absolutely convinced that he will be unable to resist the call to return or to come for the first time at some point in the future. So please stay tuned for that. And it is my real honor to welcome and introduce our, I've been saying it's pinch hitter. I've been saying pitch hitter, but I learned from baseball enthusiasts. This will be the only baseball reference of the day, I'm sorry, fans. As far as I know, our pinch hitter, Dr. Peter Huff, who was the person who had originally made it possible for our guest speaker to be here. Peter is a good friend of this congregation and support to this congregation, as his filling in this morning is testament to. He is professor of world religions and director of university ministries at University of Mary. And people have been saying after he spoke last Mother's Day, we should ask that Peter Huff to speak again. So your wish has come true this morning. Please welcome warmly Dr. Peter Huff.
So I greatly appreciate everything this congregation stands for, and it's probably impossible to be more excited about Saturday than your minister is, but I'm probably up there. So that will be a wonderful day, and nothing is better than a good UU ordination party, so certainly look forward to that as well. But thank you for being what you are in this community. You're greatly appreciated, and we would be very, very different without you, believe me. One word of warning is probably necessary just because of some of the material I'll be dealing with today. I will say the N word twice, only because I'm quoting someone who had that directed at them, and to ignore that I think would be a disservice to the reality that those people were facing. So I hope it doesn't offend you, but it certainly does remind us of the ugly reality that so many of us have been fighting and will continue to fight, hopefully not forever, but still fighting that. And I won't directly make a reference to Mahatma Gandhi today, but in a UU publication, I have made reference both to King and Gandhi, and of course King owed so much to Mahatma Gandhi, as we all do. So, on the front of your bulletin, you have what was going to be the topic addressed by Dr. Albert Rabateau, Why Am I Here? So the title of today's message, officially announced in this beautifully designed bulletin, is rendered painfully ironic by the more painful inflammation of a set of lungs 1,600 miles away. Somewhere in the Ivy League town of Princeton, New Jersey, a professor whose work I've admired for over 30 years is, as he said in his email yesterday, and since he's a model of humanistic scholarship, committed to the highest standard of the historical critical method, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me quoting directly from the documentary evidence. He is struggling with bronchial problems. I'm coughing frequently, and as a result, straining stomach muscles, which then ache. And I am experiencing dizziness when I walk. With deep regret, I don't feel up to my planned trip, and so on. That's when I was groaning yesterday. That explains why someone is not here, and we deeply regret it too. The greatest fear of the academic, and I know from personal experience, is any disease that attacks from the chest up. And we pray for Professor Albert Rabateau's speedy and full recovery. So, just to review, if you're already lost, the bulletin, which is endowed with a certain degree of infallibility. If the opening song is not truly number 389, then congregational trust begins to erode. The bulletin clearly says, Dr. Albert Rabateau, why am I here? Now you know why he's not here. We haven't quite established why he was supposed to be here, nor have we ever come close to establishing, and you deserve some establishment on this point, why I'm here. So one established point at a time. You know, if you leave now, you're not going to go to any other church anyway. Hey, if we split now, we can almost make the 11 at St. So-and-so. No, no one is even thinking about that. So I ask for your patience. First, why Professor Albert J. Rabateau was supposed to be here. The occasion was the occurrence of the annual Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Tomorrow is the national holiday honoring Dr. King, his achievements, his legacy. Every year it falls on or near his birthday, and tomorrow it coincides directly with the day of his birth, January 15. Born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929, if he were still with us, King would be 89 years old tomorrow. He was born Michael, and throughout his life, his closest friends called him Mike. His father, who after a transformative trip to the Reformation sites in Germany, changed his own name to Martin Luther, changed his son's name to the same. Unfortunately, there are still people who can't quite properly distinguish Martin Luther and Martin Luther King. All my life, I've heard people who think they have something profound to say, confusing the two. Even Google can't get it right. Search for images of Martin Luther King, and pictures of the 16th century Protestant reformer keep coming up. I'll come back to the King family business in just a minute, but I should especially mention now that this year the MLK holiday has even greater significance than usual because it falls in the year marking the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. On April 4th, 1968, around 6 in the evening, a metal-jacketed 30-06 bullet from a high-powered rifle ripped through the neck of the 39-year-old Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he stood on the balcony outside room 306 of the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. Most people with PhDs in theology don't die that way. Less than 24 hours earlier, in support of a labor strike in Memphis, Dr. King had delivered one of his most memorable speeches. And this is the way it concludes. Well, I don't know what will happen. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. On April 4th, 1968, I was 9 years old, born and raised in Atlanta. I'll recall my memories of April 5th in a moment. Now I should mention that Professor Raboteau, our scheduled speaker, was 25 at the time, somewhere in the course of his graduate education in American religious history at Berkeley and Yale. Which leads me to the explanation for his invitation, something that does require explanation since I suspect most Princeton professors do not receive invitations to speak in Bismarck, North Dakota. I first discovered Raboteau when I was a graduate teaching assistant at Indiana University. I was teaching my very first university course, a survey of Native American and African American religious history, subjects I had enough mastery of to fill about one 55-minute lecture, if I spoke slowly, not a 15-week course. My principal professor, who had been a fellow graduate student with Raboteau at Yale, introduced me to his work, and at least I began to get acquainted with the best scholarship in African American studies, because that's who Albert Raboteau is today, the Dean of African American Religious History Research. His award-winning book, Slave Religion, The Invisible Institution in the Antebellum South, is the classic on the topic, and I wish I had the time today to explore its great significance. It truly revolutionized our understanding of the religious life of enslaved Africans and their descendants in this country, exposing the cultural creativity at the heart of the slavery experience. His other books, Canaan Land, A Fire in the Bones, and his most recent book, American Prophets, have made Raboteau the nation's leading authority on the African American religious experience. All of this had a tremendous effect on my evolving understanding of my chosen field, the religious histories of the American peoples. What has been especially striking to me, however, is Albert Raboteau, the person. And here we get to the inspiration for his invitation. Along with the books I mentioned, Raboteau's autobiography came my way just at the right time in my life, entitled A Sorrowful Joy, and it's just a small volume, A Sorrowful Joy. It recounts a remarkable life distinguished by the uncommon attempt to balance scholarly excellence and a quest for spiritual integrity. If Raboteau were here today, speaking on why I am here, I have a feeling he would revisit the themes laid out in his extraordinary life story. Just to give you a sense of what he might have mentioned, he was born in Mississippi, just 50 miles across the Gulf from New Orleans. The great-grandson of slaves, he and his Creole-speaking relatives came from African, French, German, and Indian families. Born in the 1940s, he knew the full force of the legal and official racism of U.S. domestic policy. On page 2, he recounts the murder of his father. On page 3, he remembers white women, that's not the word he uses, at Bay St. Louis yelling at his mother, "Y'all can't swim there, here!" On page 4, he describes being forced to sit in the back of his own Catholic church. On page 5, he narrates the excommunication of his stepfather, a former priest. And on page 6, he describes in excruciating detail his mother's split-second decision not to kill a white child who just called her son a nigger. 6 pages, and the reader is already overwhelmed with rage, shame, violence, and tears. That's the sort of person whose testimony you want to hear on the eve of Martin Luther King Day. Speaking of tears, now you begin to discover why I'm here. I mentioned April 5th, 1968, the day after King's assassination. I was in 4th grade and had basically grown up with King on TV and in the cultural atmosphere, that is. I'm exactly the same age as his oldest son, but of course we never met as children. We were both Baptists and both deep into church life. MLK Sr., Daddy King, was a Baptist preacher, and MLK Jr. and his brother A.D. followed in his footsteps. Not without significant differences, though. King rejected his fundamentalist upbringing during his seminary days, even briefly contemplating affiliation with the Unitarian Church. Later, I, the son of a Sunday school teacher and a lay preacher, would follow a similar path. But in 1968, although I had been with my parents to scores of Atlanta Baptist churches for revivals, concerts, vacation Bible schools, and dinners on the grounds, and had sold books with my father at Billy Graham crusades, we never somehow made it to the most prominent Baptist church in Black Atlanta, the King's Ebenezer Baptist Church. Long the spiritual center of gravity of Auburn Avenue, where Dr. King's birthplace, the MLK Center for Nonviolent Social Change, and the graves of Martin and Coretta Scott King are located. On that April 5th in 1968, the Friday before Palm Sunday, I confronted for the first time, I think, the ugly process that turns otherwise decent white boys into mindless racists. Standing by the windows of our classroom, staring aimlessly into the still, dark morning before the first bell rang, I heard with horror my classmate, Clay Carroll, announce, without invitation or commentary, the following observation on current affairs. They finally got that nigger. Of course, we all knew who he was referring to. No one said anything. I can still feel the rigidity of my 9-year-old body. I can't tell you how many times in the years since then I've composed in my mind witty and devastating retorts filled with light and fire from the Hebrew Bible and the Sermon on the Mount and sophisticated criticism from Marx and Freud. My first confrontation with raw racism from my own people, and I said nothing. I didn't even tear up. Much would come later, including the tears. Let me close with another encounter. This one took place in the 80s, actually when I was that graduate teaching assistant, teaching things I didn't know a darn thing about. First, some background. In the golden years before Six Flags, nothing could beat a Saturday afternoon at Funtown. This Atlanta area amusement park had everything baby boomers loved. Bumper cars, a merry-go-round, games of chance, and my favorite, the helicopter ride. My brother and I hopped in the cockpit, yanked back the metal bar, and soared high into the summer sky. Today, Funtown is just another forgotten relic of our pre-postmodern cultural landscape. Along with downtown department stores and drive-in theaters, it didn't survive the natural selection of the South's urban evolution. The only sign of life on the old site now is wild grass growing in the cracks of the antique parking lot. In its heyday, though, Funtown was a magical getaway for carefree children of the Cold War era. One thing about Funtown I never recognized at the time, it was for whites only. Many years later, I rediscovered Funtown, this time in a text assigned for a college history class. We were reading Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. Originally written on scraps of newspaper and toilet tissue while King was incarcerated for his leadership of anti-segregation protests in 1963, the document is now a classic of American literature, on par with Thoreau's Civil Disobedience and Lincoln's Second Inaugural. In the letter, King brilliantly combined biblical wisdom, natural law philosophy, U.S. constitutional theory, and the Black American experience into an unprecedented prophetic call for justice in contemporary society. And there on the page was my old haunt, Funtown. King addressed the letter not to racist critics, but to moderate sympathizers, all liberal white Southern clergy who feared that the civil rights movement was progressing too quickly. Give your opponents time to respond in good faith, they said, and don't tie your campaign to a controversial critique of capitalism or polarizing appraisal of foreign policy. King did not take their advice, and it eventually cost him his life. But he didn't completely ignore their concern either. In about 7,000 words, the Baptist preacher's provocative letter, styled after St. Paul's ancient prison epistles, eloquently explained why we can't wait. King's reasons for urgency carry the leader's reader from Greco-Roman inquiries into the nature of justice to more recent instances of police brutality and mob violence. The names King dropped in his text constitute a virtual who's who of Western civilization. Reading this letter with precision and understanding is the near equivalent of a truly liberal education. The author of this text is not the feel-good Dr. King of today's annoyingly glib MLK holiday celebrations. The real King continues to convict the comfortable conscience. Cornel West, who spoke eloquently at Osheti Shakowin just about a year ago, says we have forgotten at our own peril the radical King. King's most personal reason for urgency concerned his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. Here's a quote from King's letter. When you see tears welling up in her eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see ominous clouds of inferiority beginning to form in her little mental sky, he informed his hesitant supporters, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. In graduate school, I had the opportunity to meet Yolanda King, MLK's oldest child. We talked generally about current affairs, and she told me about her collaborative work with one of Malcolm X's daughters. Finally, I asked her about Funtown. She admitted that she was the girl mentioned in her father's famous letter, but had not thought about the amusement park in a long, long time. I had hoped that the Funtown reference would somehow deepen our conversation, perhaps even spark an engaging dialogue about the unfinished agenda of her father or the unpredictable career of our generation. Instead, it only brought our chat to a sudden and somewhat awkward conclusion. After 20-something years, tears were welling up again. This time, they were in my eyes. So why am I here? Mainly because someone greater than I couldn't be here. Someone I earnestly want you to meet and hear, because he has a testimony to share, a testimony about the world Martin Luther King tried to liberate and transform. Instead, you have the testimony of another sort of witness, someone who for too long profited from that untransformed world and has devoted his life to exposing and dismantling the injustice that provided such comfort and stability to so many people like him. His eyes, mine eyes, have seen a lot. More my own brand of Rabbitoh's sorrowful joy. May we all, one day soon, see the glory. Thank you.
And our closing words come from Project Plowshares. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Blessed be.